Please come.
You don't need it.
Actually, the thing is that
Yeah.
actually the thing is that I'm not very good with the mic. I'm better with the voice which God has given me. So if anybody cannot listen to me, please do tell. I would accordingly fit myself.
Let me introduce this.
Yeah, sure.
He's so well known in his department that we
Yeah, I know that. So, but still,
He has come several
the
times.
organizer has told me to introduce him.
Please.
Told me. Devajyoti Dan has been working in Nava Valiganj Mahavidyalaya since 2009. He has special interest in modern postmodern literature and theories. He was the head of the department in English in Nava Valiganj Mahavidyalaya from June 2015 to January 2017. He learned French initially from Ramakrishna Mission and then pursued further diploma in French from Alliance Française du Bengal. He has several publications to his credit, including 2 books of poems, Enigma of Red Shadows and Enigma Unveiled. He was awarded the first prize in the World French Poetry Competition known as Les Prix de Poetas, Italianized. Okay, this is not. In 2007. So he had worked in the Alliance Française du Bengal as cultural co-coordinator in the Cine Club from 2007 to 2009. Yes. So you don't need.
Yeah, no. The title of my paper has been changed a little from, I've just a little bit tweaked it a bit. Now it reads, Challenging Social and Political Normativity Through Corporeality, a reading of Marquis de Sade through Lacan and Foucault. So, when I'm saying Marquis de Sade, he's a very complicated person. He's being misinterpreted, misunderstood, mostly, and he says in one of his journals, Je suis l'homme de la nature avant d'être celui de la société. Les passions de l'homme ne sont que des moyens que la nature emploie pour parvenir à ses désirs. So he is somebody who is very much against Rousseauian enlightenment or enlightened society, which looks so very nice. And l'âge de la raison always has its own charm to it. And French Revolution Française has already glorified most of the people like Rousseau. And Marquis de Sade always remained in a kind of shadow. Being imprisoned in Bastille, he wrote with his own blood, piss and shit on the walls of Bastille. 120 Days of Sodom is basically written in blood, piss and sweat and shit. So he says, in like when he was asked about the human conundrums, he says, Rien ne périt, mon ami, rien ne se détruit dans le monde. Aujourd'hui l'eau, demain verre, après-demain mouche. So today it's human who dies, tomorrow it's a vermin that dies, next day, well, it may be a fly that dies. So what does it matter? N'est-ce pas toujours exister dialogue entre un prêtre ou moribond? So when I am looking into his text, I don't want to gross you out, but it is pretty difficult not to gross you out when you are talking about Alphonse d'Otienne de Sade, later or popularly known as Marquis de Sade. And his writing, 120 Days of Sodom, Juliet, and others, has kind of this robust naturalism of evil. There is a kind of, I won't say glorification of torture, but I would say the realism of torture that Foucault explicitly studies in Discipline and Punishment. So with the inversion of politicized, systematized order, the real often gets refracted and the closure finds itself open to the subverted real, including in it reigning discourse and therewith the subject to discursive mark. This is exactly what Foucault wants in his discourse of sexuality as a thinker of crisis. He is implicitly committed to the notion that the reigning order, whatever its nature, is degraded. His idea of state of exception brings back the discursive and non-discursive violence in the discourse of sexuality encoded by Marquis de Sade. The texts of Sade exhibits the violence as a modus operandi for orgasmic catharsis. The nuances of torture creates in him kind of Dionysiac raptures. Violence reigns in the work of Sade, principally in the form of sexual persecution and enlightened sophistry. Sade's inexorable drive to unravel the hypocrisy of institution and religion let him cast a almost monochrome, to his novels. Thus, we have scenes when a nun is having anal penetration while watching a mass in a chapel. Again, only lavatory allowed by the 4 aristocrats in 120 Days of Sodom to the victim is in the altar of the cathedral in Chateau. What Sade has intended, according to many critics, is embodiment and quintessence of transgression. So, Sade is following a kind of chronos timing when we have 3 seasons in 120 Days of Sodom. The first season is where you are asked to listen to the anecdotes, including men who like to masturbate in the faces of 7-year-old girl and indulge in urine drinking and coprophagia or scatology. And we often see the use of food and shit that has been unparalleledly manifested when in his circle of shit, he actually says that, nothing better meets the eye, as a quote, nothing better meets the eye when I open my commode, to see a liquid shit over it, and I ask the girls to lick on it. And in one of his second season, that is in the next season, he describes how one of the libertine plucks out both her eyes and leaves her locked in her room. She has been previously very soundly whipped. And the darker shades of his Gothic monochrome comes out again when he says in page 349, Messieurs avail themselves of Zippor's arse, and Adelaide is condemned to a rude fustigation, after which a hot iron is brought very close to the interior of her vagina, to her armpits, and she is slightly scorched beneath each nipples. So as if she is being prepared to be finally made into a food. Her body is both food and merde. So, in the final season, when he talks about how the libertines are actually wanting innovative ways to kill the girls, 16 of them were there. That happened in the march, and I quote, he invented a novel method, and I quote, by means of a hollow tube, a mouse is introduced in her cunt. The tube is withdrawn, the cunt is sewn up, and the animal, unable to get out, devours her entrails from inside. So what we see here is horrorism. And this ontological resemblance obviously caused his books to be banned, burned, and as you know, he was imprisoned in Bastille for perhaps more than political reasons. So what we see here is a kind of abject of Kristeva, and here Sade's own mother and his relationship with the mother has this created this frision, the dispositif of the abject. In Le Pouvoir d'Horreur, Kristeva writes, "The abject is not an object facing me, which I name or imagine, nor is it an obsessed and otherness, carelessly fleeing in a systematic quest of desire. What is abject is not my correlative, and providing me with something or something else as support would allow me to be more or less detached and autonomous. The abject has only one quality of object, that is being opposed to I." So, when we see Sade is writing, we see that he creates a kind of an antibody to violence with a therapeutic sexuality. And he embraces almost the Foucauldian idea of treatment. And I quote from Foucault, "For us, the human body defines by natural right the space of origin and of distribution of disease, a space whose lines, volume, surface, and roots are laid down in accordance with the now familiar geometry by the anatomical atlas. But this order of the solid, visible body is only one way. In all likelihood, neither the first nor the most fundamental, in which one spatializes disease. There have been and will be other distribution of illness." And I end my quote. The gaze on human body with the lens of sexual discourse imprints the power of Sade's writing. For Sade, unlike Foucault, who does not negotiate the speciality of the body as historical apparatus, but as an episteme. So we see Foucault directly talks about Sade as somebody whose writing should not be read. Even Lacan and Zizek has actually rejected his writing as anything that is not pornology, if not pornography. But what made his writing supremely naturalistic is that 16th century, 17th century France, we have to remember the horrification that we are facing is very common. People are broken in the wheels, people are quartered by 4 horses. So the idea of body being subjected to ruthless torture is a naturalistic phenomenon. And Sade is neither a debauchee nor a pervert, as modern psychiatrists would definitely call it. So when I am reading his quotes, I'm not trying to tell how bad he is, because evil, bad is the terminology fostered, fretted, cultured, politicized according to the ages. So what Louis XIV would love to do, Louis XVI cannot. So what happens in Bartholomew massacre in 1526, 24th of August, where Huguenots are aimlessly slaughtered by Charles IX, is something that would lead to almost talk us about genocide with something of religious morbidity. So when we are looking at Sade, we should not look only at his morbidity. We should not recognize Sade as something who should be kept in a closed chapter, because he combines crime with naturalism, and determinist philosophy and calls lust as the final station of crime. And that is why in Juliet, he formulates that anything which destroys acts in accordance to nature. Foucault, on the other hand, can support resistance and talk of sex and violence as specifically discursive apparatus in his Confession of the Flesh. But he will always use it to create an anti-establishment of reigning discourse. Foucault's concern with power and sexuality and violence in Discipline and Punish, for instance, is analytic, while Sade's project in Juliet is fatalistic view of the world of metaphysics. We can never dismiss that Sade wants to enjoy the vice as natural, but Foucault will deal with vice, power and sexuality in a normative instrumentality that allows analysis. The sociological contours of the two great artists diverge greatly, though they sought to disembark from the journey of hierarchy of order. Foucault's attempt at decoding the ritual of power is seen when he finds omnipresent and yet non-existence. This ambiguity is the characteristic of hermeneutics, as in reality, power for him simply means a cluster of relations, not in the substantive, essentialist sense at all. In the hands of Foucault, human bodies turn into discourse, but with Sade, discourse turns into materiality. As human body turns into scatological objects yielding no productivity, the entire idea of Sade becomes clear. He establishes his own idea of biopolitics, which refuses anthropological mutations and defabricates human body as pollutant. The plastic modality of human body is a garbage, which is not recyclable. And so Sade finds the circles to fit them in his 120 Days of Sodom. As both the leftist and fascist governmentality wants to find a cultural genocide to make a human body a usable product, Sade rejects it to show human life and their body is a non-biodegradable hazard that live better in prohibition than in the state of exception. In Juliet, Sade presents female body through the project of masochism, and I quote, "This torture is sweeter than you may imagine, Therese," says Roland. "You will only approach death by way of unspeakably pleasurable sensations. The pressure of this noose will bring to bear upon your nervous system, will set fire to the organs of voluptuousness. The effect is certain. Were all the people who are condemned to this torture to know in what an intoxication of joy it makes one die, less terrified by this retribution of their crimes, they would commit them more often and with much greater self-assurance. This delicious operation, Therese, by causing as well the contraction of the locale in which I am going to fit myself." He added, as he presented himself to the criminal avenue, "So worthy of a villain, he is able to double my pleasure and end my court Justine." This is vintage Sade, blending pleasure and pain, going beyond normatives, going beyond ethics, going beyond even the idea from where the ethics would start. This is no amoral hedonism, my friends. This is simply Sade exerting the right that crime is natural. So, we see the moral episteme is deleted. Ethical nuances does not restrict or construct Sadean discourse. This discursive and non-discursive apparatus of violence and sexuality gets a coinage in Sade's universe as naturalistic and fatalistic. The gaze here, now final part I will come to Lacan, the gaze here is a drive, a partial manifestation of desire. For Romo, through the gaze has become central enough to capture desire in its entirety. Between him and Therese, it covers all, quote, the dialectical mediation of desire. End quote. According to Lacanian psychoanalysis, gazing is vital in the mirror stage, for it relates to the baby's recognition of self and other and initiates its constitution of symbolic order. The first gaze of mother and the self represented as a gestalt root in child's psyche and become the child's lifelong goal to search for the reunion with mother and to achieve the state of unity and totality. For Roland, the nous becomes imaginary phallus, the phi. Desires to be this imaginary object for M other is a game of seduction. But for Therese, nous is a symbolic phallus, a pure signifier that has no signifier. Without the nous, he feels castrated. Thus, we have the birth of Lacanian subject, the S split. The split, divided, barred, castrated subject in Roland. The nous allows Roland to recollect his infantile jouissance. Its absence generates a feeling of castration as it becomes an impediment to constitute a pseudo-reunion image with his mother, who is displaced by Therese. Rather than referring to fathers and mothers, which invites thinking in terms of images, Lacan articulates the Oedipal structure in terms of a series of algebraic symbols. So what we see through these algebraic symbols, that the subject becomes alienated with language. And how, in this male gaze of Roland, we are trapped by the mother. And mother becomes almost crocodilian. And Sade has a similar idea. So I quote from Lacan, the other side of psychoanalysis. A huge crocodile in whose jaws you are. That's the mother. One never knows what might suddenly come over her and make her shut her trap. Thus I have tried to explain that there was something that was reassuring. There is a roller made out of stone, of course, which is there potentially at the level of a trap. And it acts as a restraint, as a wedge. It's called the phallus. It is the roller that shelters you if at all, sudden she closes it. So the final conclusion that I am coming to, because I don't know how much I have.
1.5 minutes.
The novel Justine presents an interesting level of confrontation in sexual praxis highlighted by violence. The power in this novel is exercised to create an asymmetrical linearity of pleasure through pain. The character of Justine, just like Juliet, brings out the paradox of desire. Juliet and Justine are two texts that bifurcates on the point that when single narrative of desire becomes a natural desire for crime and crime of passion. The pornological details of Juliet's life is seen through the theological disaster and ecclesiastical hypocrisy, and thus points out the naturalism of sex, violence as the code of metaphysical fatalism. Something which I tried to show through both Foucauldian and Lacanian analysis, and if there is a question for me to elaborate on them, I can talk about on Foucault's history of sexuality. But in this present moment, I would like to end my discussion here. I guess my time is up. Thank you very much for listening to this gross paper of mine without actually coming to throw anything at me, which I half expected.
Okay, thank you, Debo, Jyoti, for this, the paper which has intriguing questions related to human body. And before, I have a question. I don't know, let us see if the audience has any questions. Yes, please.
Thank you for this nice paper, because it's something that, which horrors anyone to read some. But because you brought up the topic of the abject in Kristeva, so it made me reflect, because Kristeva, when she speaks of the abject, she also says that it is those things in us that we repel, the bodily, the bodily déchets, the things that the body throws out, and it also signifies a stage where there is a fear. Actually, it symbolizes that fear in the human being to go back to that state, initial state where it was joined with the mother's consciousness. So do you think in Sade also it is a kind that he's always rebelling that stage where what it repels is actually what it attracts. So in Sade also you think there is an intention of a kind that the feminine is what he's trying to avoid, and therefore he makes such appalling scenes of torture and...
Yeah, thank you, Modi. It's a nice question. Thank you, Modi, for this question. When I was studying, it was very difficult to study anything about Sade without getting biased. Very difficult, believe me. His relation with his mother was one thing that which is quite straightforward. He was being brutalized by his mother from a very childhood. Like, if you read it, like at 3 years old, his mother actually, because he was crying for certain thing which a 3-year-old child can, just picked the child, Sade up and threw him against the wall. That was the first walling he got. At 6 years old, he actually didn't listen to his mother, and his mother actually took his hand and put it near the oven, not to burn, but very near to it. Very much remembering us what happened in 120 days of Sodom. It's almost like, he was being said that, fire, I'm going to put your hand in fire, next time you'll cry. So what happens very naturally to children of those, these punishments are very horrific when we think about our children, like how we pamper them, how we actually really pamper them, and our mothers, how they used to discipline us, and their mothers, how they used to discipline us. And if you go back on that, sometimes certain disciplinarian actions, which is socially permitted, may create a psychological depression. So this aversion, the element of aversion, the merde, the vomit, everything that he generates as a naturalistic passion is something very much fed into his mother-son relationship. And that kept on translating. Like, he had a bad breakup when he was 16 years age. He was, I won't say literally butcherized by his mother, but yeah, there was this disciplinarian actions that were often being given to him were not palatable in modern society. We wouldn't do that to our children, that's for sure. And maybe we couldn't create another Sade. Because we can create another Rousseau perhaps, definitely we can. Revolutions happen. French revolutions owe many things to Rousseau, to Voltaire, even to Robespierre. But nothing can create another Sade. He doesn't believe that of natural amoral hedonism. He believed that crime is what we do in everyday life. We think and we translate that. Even when we smash a small, insect and get some sadistic delight, because we cannot obviously crush somebody we hate, is a kind of translatable. And he says no bar. Go for it. Go for crime. Crime is natural. Do it. However averse you feel of it.
My question is not exactly about the book written by Marquis de Sade, but about the film shot by Piero Pasolini, the Piero Pasolini film, or the 120 days or so. Would you like to make some comments?
Definitely. When we see the juxtaposition, it's brilliant. Where Sade is trying to make you hate something, Pasolini is making you laugh on that. There is a inhibitive laughter about Pasolini. Pasolini, you have to remember, is a product of his age, and his anti-consumerist agenda has always been there. So when you are watching that, the farcical, especially the character of Durset, which changed so much from Sade to Pasolini. Durset is almost the image spitting image almost of the American government, who laughs at people's sins, who likes to make a mockery of life, who mocks everything that you hold sacred, everything. So there is nothing sacred when it comes to Pasolini. Pasolini loves making you laugh at the thing. How bourgeoisism has created perfect cake of shit, and how when you are saying with Sade, you would rather look how much blood is there in that shit there.
Thank you.
Okay. So there's no question.
I think you
So
have
you
one.
can-
No, the thing is that we decided to not break for tea. Those who want to have a cup of tea, it's right outside. You can have it and come right back in. If we break up, we'll take 10-15 minutes unnecessarily, and we want to move things along. So we're starting the next session. Manmohan, please come up and chair the session, and the presenters also can come up. One is here, the other two also can come up and be here. And we'll begin this session.